Welcome to Simply Enough. This is Zachary and Elizabeth, and thanks for tuning in.
If you're liking our podcast, we'd love it if you'd share with your friends and family.
And then rate and review to raise our visibility and spread the message of enoughness.
We love you, and remember, you are simply enough.
Just as you are.
Period. Something crosses your mind, somebody crosses your heart to where they sit in your heart for a moment. Act on that, because you don't know if you are being a channel, an instrument of peace and love and hope and faith.
Here's this wonderful reminder, not only that I'm not alone, but also that my request was tethered to a very specific outcome. And actually, the outcome was far better. Or the result was far better because my own perspective was limiting the impact that it could have had. You understand what it would have looked like?
Yes, moments, feelings of loneliness will be there. It is a part of life. It is a part of the human experience. Ironically, though, that sometimes it is in those moments of feeling lonely, if we can connect and align with our soul mate within the universe, our soul mate of God, that's actually when we can realize most that we are not alone.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Simply Enough. I'm Mr. Zachary Leonard.
And I'm Dr. Elizabeth Ignacio, and we are closing in soon on our 100th episode, which is mind-boggling. And I happened to look at previous episodes, just kind of walking down memory lane of, wow, look at, the topics that we've talked about, what topics seem to have, resonated. And I was on our YouTube page, plug everybody for the YouTube page. And one episode jumped out at me in terms of the number of views. And it was, "You are not alone." And boy, to even say those words, actually, I just all of a sudden had tears in my eyes. And that's because, Zachary, this season in my life, I am very aware of where I am in this season of my life, meaning, so, my daughter is, thank you, God, thriving in college and just doing so well. And I just came from visiting her a couple of weeks ago, and just more and more, it's clear to me how she's thriving and how, I joke that I've never felt more irrelevant or superfluous because she's thriving. And that's how it's supposed to be. That is the cycle and circle of life. And then also, with my son, he's months away from graduating high school and looking to, go to the continent for college. And his personality, he and I are very, very close as well. Like I am with my daughter. He is very independent, and I don't know, what his communication is going to be like, when he's in college. I hope that he loves college and is independent and not dependent on me. But also I recognize, though, that with his independent streak, I kind of losing a part of myself a little bit as he leaves home. And my husband is doing well, in his career, and his career is actually requiring a little bit more travel than years past. So I find myself alone, or also in terms of friend group. On first glance, so many of my friends that I've had these past, years were very kid related. So, the soccer moms of my son's team and my mom's and my daughter's team. And we're having recently visited, friends back in Washington, D.C., where I lived for 13 years. Being with them actually made them miss them more because I'm just cognizant of how far away I am in Hawaii, whereas they're, in DC or New York, or you, my dear beloved, in Chicago. And then just this season of life, I feel like what has kind of kept me busy and kept me full. I'm very much in a transition where I'm noticing alone time. And I specifically say alone time because being alone isn't bad or negative in and of itself, but lonely hits home sometimes. And interestingly, one can be lonely even in a relationship or lonely in a crowded room. So that's why I'm making the distinction of when I have alone time, which I can, use quite quote productively, and productively sometimes means doing nothing, and that's okay. But alone time versus kind of feeling lonely. In terms of the type of person I am, I don't live in those feelings for long. I recognize it when I'm there. I don't chastise myself when I'm having those feelings. But I do make a concerted effort after recognizing that's how I feel, honoring why I feel that way. I can rationalize and explain why I feel that way, but how is it that I lift myself out of those feelings of feeling lonely while alone or feeling lonely in a crowded room? And I have to say that the easiest and quickest strategy for me in terms of not feeling alone is faith. And knowing that the universe has got my back. God loves me and is with me and is right next to me, and sometimes even carrying and lifting me when I need it. And that is kind of my tool when I feel that way. But that is a foundational tool for me. My spirituality, not my religion, but my spirituality, my faith, that I am held in this universe and that I'm cared for and that I am beloved, and therefore I am not alone, does lift me in these times when I feel admittedly lonely. And I was just wondering, if you yourself might have had those feelings, have had any, tools to share, because I just couldn't help notice, like I said, on looking back at our YouTube videos, how there is a distinctive bump in numbers of views of that particular episode and what that might say about how people are feeling, whether or not they want to outwardly verbalize it like I just did or not.
I have quite a few thoughts. So, first of all, I want to say, if any of these thoughts take us away from the really beautiful thread that you started, please, let me know. The first thing that I just wanted to offer is when I moved to Chicago and was, we didn't know anybody, and I was struggling with my job and everything. I mean, you were there, right? And this podcast was there. There was a pivotal moment as we were talking offline. We weren't recording or anything, and I don't know if you quite remember it, but I'm going to give it to you now because I feel like it's pretty relevant, and I love being able to give back your things to you when you give them to me. So the first thing that I will say is, you encourage me to name the feeling and to just call it feeling lonely, and just the power of being able to name it. It, for me, and I don't know about for you in this moment, it gave breath to the feelings, because I know for myself, there can be shame associated with feeling lonely, or the identification of that, which is where I think there is some universality to, or some a draw for people to watch that video, because I do think it's a universal feeling, but I also think it's a feeling that, at least for myself, I am taught to try to get over, or to work around, or, there's people around you. You can go out and do this. You can do this. You can do that. You have these people and that people. And sometimes, that the the way that I've been taught to try to overcome loneliness is to disregard it as not a real feeling. And so when I
Mm.
was struggling at that time in Chicago, you just giving me permission to name it and to say, this is where you are, was such a breath of like, okay, this is a real thing for me. And so I just give it back to you right now, because I mean, you shared so openly about where you are and this transition of life. But then you also just spoke very plainly about it. And that modeling was the kind of modeling that you did for me at that time in Chicago. So I just want to honor that for right now. Um, you've seen the show Dear Evan Hansen,
Mhm.
right? Okay, well, one of the most powerful songs of Dear Evan Hansen is "You Are Not Alone." It's whether you like the show or not, the music is written really well, but also that becomes a universal theme of the musical, because Evan Hansen is struggling with making relationships and friendships with people. So it is, I think it is a feeling that we all at some point experience, whether we are in a crowded room or whether we are by ourselves. Regardless, the feeling of that sense of isolation, and your strategy of coming back to your spirituality is one that I have as well. And I've shared openly in the podcast about my moment on campus at Notre Dame when I was struggling with my sexual orientation identity and a part of this Catholic university and where I fit in. And somehow I found myself walking towards the basilica. The circumstances of that event led me to exactly what you're saying right now. Is like, I was feeling lonely, but I wasn't alone. But
Mhm.
the beautiful thing was I wasn't also trying to gloss over those feelings. It was just a gentle reminder that my spirituality, my faith is the constant that's always there. And that little reminder was so powerful. I mean, it really was just transformative. Um, just to honor where I was at, and also just a very sweet little voice that was like, no, you're not alone. You may feel
Mhm.
lonely, but you are not alone. And that was a very, very prominent moment in my life. So yes, I've had that. I've had that for sure. One, because of a moment with you, and also because a direct moment, um, through the vehicle of religion. But I want to move it away from religion, because it was really about my connection with God, my personal
Mhm.
connection with God.
In being in a relationship. And especially, one of our previous episodes was about how, a relationship doesn't complete you, and how I don't like, what is that movie, Jerry Maguire, with that
Jerry Maguire.
scene where, they say you complete me. And it's not about completing, it's 1 + 1 = 3. But there are so many people out there, I think even youth in particular, who are looking to be completed by finding their quote soulmate or their quote twin flame. And I just kind of think, to lay that burden on somebody else to fill you or complete you as your soulmate, that's a burden on them. And honestly, it's like the pursuit of perfection. You're going to set yourself up for disappointment in trying to, quote, cure your loneliness by thinking somebody else is going to be your, soulmate that's going to fulfill your every need. So that's where, even in my prayer, I call Jesus my true soul mate. And I mean that in terms of truly my soul. Like, when strip away everything from this world, my soul, all I need is my relationship with my faith, relationship with God. And that is, or that's my true soulmate. And then from that place, I can give of myself love and receive love, coming from that foundation of, I'm not alone because my soulmate is in my faith and is in God. The other thing that I'll say too is, the universe having my back truly is, it is uncanny. It's really amazing. That's where it's synchronicity and divine intervention, because um, notably these past few months, I'll admit it, of feeling, of having these moments of loneliness. Um, that's right around when I'll get random texts from people of like, hey, want to grab lunch? Or, or even if it's not to meet, just a moment of a reach out or connection, right when I'm feeling that I need it. And that's where I'm just kind of like, God's got me. The universe has my back. And what I'm trying to say there is again, to what you've said as well, one may feel lonely, but it's very unlikely that one is truly alone.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can separate those two and recognize, yeah, I'm feeling lonely at this moment or today, but I am not truly alone. That is that kind of, lifeline to help pull you out. Now, as a clinician, I do have to say this. This is a strong distinction between clinical depression. So
yes,
for any listeners or viewers that are listening to this episode right now, in no way am I making this akin to depression. I'm not diminishing depression with a capital D. And if that is truly, how you're feeling, please do, reach out to a therapist, a counselor, because depression with a capital D is real.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hug you and I embrace you through the airwaves. And I send love and support. And I'm not in any way trying to simplify or diminish those feelings. I acknowledge that my feeling is feeling depressed, not having depression. Those are two different things. And so I think that's very important to honor. If you're feeling in any way, there's many hotlines out there for, suicide prevention. So please know that I am making this strong distinction of the feeling of loneliness that can be, momentary for a season. Because there's the emotion and the feeling of loneliness, and then there is the state of depression, and so the state of depression is very real. So I'm not in any way minimizing or diminishing or dismissing that. What I'm talking about here in this episode are these feelings, situational feelings, momentary feelings of loneliness, and how I can kind of recenter and reconnect and recognize that I may be feeling lonely, but I am truly not alone.
If I may, so I'm glad you made that distinction. I think where I would jump into that is the questions that I have surrounding from my own experience. So I'm just going to speak plainly. So the questions of when it's no longer a season, right? And when that becomes a state. And I think that is something I have really come to recognize is where there's a tremendous amount of support for me, to your point, that the universe God is, I believe, working in support of me. That sometimes those little birdies that show up in my life, or those little moments where somebody, connects with me, help me understand the difference between, am I in an emotional state or emotional place, or am I in a state of blank? Okay. And I say that because I have battled depression, and I have a psychologist that I have worked with and continue to work with to help delineate between the two. So it's an important distinction, but I also think that sometimes, at least for me, that line can be kind of gray. And that's where I did seek professional help to help me understand the difference. And it has been transformative. What I wanted to add is, and I'm smiling as I go down this, because it's a thought that I'm starting to form in the moment. So if it's not clear, please help me become clear, or, we can scrap it. Is that we are also instruments of God and the universe for each other. So you were talking about, you'll get a random text from somebody, or somebody will be like, hey, let's go out to lunch. Or, I don't know, you popped into my mind, and how are you? Like, let's catch up. we have that ability, that power to be that arm of God, that arm of the universe, that arm of whatever central faith core mantra you believe in, to do that for others in the way that that can happen to us. And why I say that is because when I find that I'm quote unquote lonely,
Mhm.
feeling lonely, I struggle to let anyone in. That I get into a natural kind of turtling phase where I just like
Mhm.
hibernate into my shell and I like shut the world down. And it was you who reminded me that those people that show up that are like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a little while, or how's it going, were instruments of the universe to say, no, 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 you're actually connected. And that is,
Mhm.
I find such a awesome, like it literally makes me feel awe that not only do we have the power to to connect with others and as they fulfill us, but we have the ability to fulfill others as well as truly an extension of God. And that's what I believe. And so I just wanted to make sure that I said that because as you were saying, I'll get this random message or whatever. I'm like, wow, like literally the the ability of somebody to be so tuned in has to
Mhm.
be something greater than us, has to be something bigger than us. Sorry, I'm kind of geeking out a little bit. Anyway, so
No,
you know what I mean. You know what I mean by
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so, there's a saying, in order to have a friend, be a friend,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's one element of what you're saying in terms of getting yourself out of your shell. You can be a friend and make a connection, but also if you're yourself are feeling great, so you're not the one in need to lift yourself up, but something crosses your mind, somebody crosses your heart to where they sit in your heart for a moment, act on that
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know if you are being a channel, an instrument of peace and love and hope and faith. Um, One reason why we are speaking so heavily of faith is to honor a serendipitous divine intervention moment of meeting your friend,
Mm-hmm.
Zachary. So I was at JFK and I had, just left my daughter in college. And because of the time of um, the, the flight and the car ride that it takes to get from my daughter's college to JFK, um, she stays in the hotel with me, especially the last night that I'm there. But I leave her way early in the morning when she's sleeping, which is a very tender time because at least I can see her, getting some rest. And I remember when she, was an infant and I used to watch her as she slept. But it's also like heartbreaking because I don't get like the big, strong squeeze hug and I almost kind of like slip off in the distance, in the quietude of the morning. And it makes me sad. I'll say
Mm-hmm.
it. And so I was at JFK, and this time, rather than being at a gate where the walkway goes directly to the
Mm-hmm.
plane, the gate actually you have to get onto a shuttle, and then the shuttle takes you actually out on the tarmac because the plane is out on the tarmac. And so I board the shuttle, and it's the airport, right? So some people are happy, other people are
Mm-hmm.
kind of grouchy, and so speaking of turtle, that's usually what I do is
Yeah.
I turtle just to kind of be in my own space. And I'm on this shuttle, and this gentleman comes up to me. What a kind, he has just this aura about him, but he came up to me and like wide-eyed, he was like, excuse me, but are you Dr. Elizabeth Ignacio? Which at that point my walls usually go up because I'm like, oh, this are you going to ask me medical advice or whatever? And he is your dear friend Zachary, went to school with you and sang in your beloved folk choir, and he was just so dear and so excitedly said, I listened to your podcast. That's how I know of you. I feel like I know you and you know nothing of me. And it was just such a lovely,
Mm-hmm.
uplifting conversation that really took me out of kind of my sadness of leaving my
Mm-hmm.
daughter. And that was a moment of truly feeling, oh, I really am not alone. The universe has got my back, because as I'm, my heart is breaking, leaving, my daughter, here is this moment of connection with a gentleman I didn't even know. And yet he's so lovely, as if we knew each other. And then he took it a step further in talking about his faith, and how when you and I, Zachary, talk about faith, our own faith on this podcast, when he hears us doing that, it really resonates with him. And that's where that just took the universe having my back up a notch further, of like, wow, truly faith and divine intervention. My soul's cup is filled by this interaction, so that while I'm feeling kind of lonely, having just left my daughter, I am not alone, because we are all connected. And if we are open to being, to your point, that instrument for others, as your friend Alan was for me, Alan was this instrument of uplifting me. And then also being open in recognizing that it is a divine intervention, that it is that serendipity, just like our previous episode of talking about blessings inventory, being open to recognizing, oh, that was a blessing. That is how we fill our account, so that when we are feeling, low and we need to withdraw, our account is filled with these moments of recognition that we are not alone. We may feel lonely at times, and honestly, that's a part of life. Sometimes actually it's in those feelings of loneliness that when we turn to our soulmate, the universe, God, that is how we actually recognize, in those moments where we're brought to our knees, feeling sad and lonely, that's when we're actually open to the recognition of, oh, we actually aren't alone.
Mm-hmm. I still can't get over the fact that you guys met and you had that moment. But again, that just comes back to what I was saying about life being awesome. Like literally moments that just knock you in the best way, and show you how connected we are, and how connected we are to the universe, to God, etc. And I two of my favorite people, Alan, just a shout out to you. You are such a dear, kind, wonderful man. And for you to have the opportunity to meet somebody who I just love so deeply, what just cool, just freaking cool. Go ahead.
Can I just say too that I can already, we're so sensitive to like the public and reviews and commentary and online trolls and that kind of stuff. I can just almost see people rolling their eyes and almost explaining away. Oh, well, that's just a coincidence. Like, you guys make it all, rainbows and unicorns of serendipity and blessings in disguise and your blessings inventory and instrument of the universe. But I mean, come on, it's just a coincidence. And I'm just going to say to that, number one, okay, well, if that's what you believe, that's what you believe, and that's your prerogative, but that doesn't diminish what it means to me and how it makes me feel. And if in you, naysayer, non-believer, makes you feel good about being right, and then I'm okay about being wrong, because if I'm wrong, I'm being wrong, but it makes me feel so good about not only myself, but about of others and the universe. And I'd rather be in that place. But I'll also say, from a scientific standpoint, that, there are actually functional MRIs. There are research studies, including twins, where we look at, genetics versus environment. And there is statistically significant research studies and functional MRIs that show that the quote high spirituality brain, or the high spirituality mind, is protected and healthier from a well-being standpoint than those with low spirituality. And I'm not saying this as a judgment, like, those of you who don't have faith, you suck. I'm not saying that at all. Right. Quite frankly, that's why I'm actually bringing up scientific studies, that it's not a personal, character judgment. When I say that to actually have faith, or at least be open to the possibility, suspend your disbelief and being open to the possibility of faith and spirituality, not religion and dogma, but faith and spirituality and something greater than yourself actually has been shown to improve one's well-being.
There are some fun kind of bam moments that happen, and I feel like this is one of them, only because, not because look, I know I like to feel right. I do. I'm sorry. I'm one of those people. And
me too.
When there is evidence to uphold a belief, I don't know why that feels good, but it does. So as you offer that, it for those naysayers or those people that are rolling their eyes, because and that is fine if that's what you believe, but just to have you come at this not only from such a mind-centered place, but a scientific place, just rounds it out. Truly, like, it really does. I don't need it to be rounded, but there are people that do. And I hope, maybe, because you keep stressing like being open, and I hope maybe that door just opened a little bit, right? And I want to add this, if this is okay. So we've got, we've got the science to back it, and I would love to hear more about the studies and how that was done. Like, how do you even take an MRI and do that assessment? Like, I would love to know some of those things. And I also hear you talking about a delineation between religion and spirituality, or faith and religion. And I think that might be something else worth just pulling apart. But here's my challenge. And I got this from a dear friend of mine named Kelly. Kelly is all about the universe and putting out there from the universe, right, what you need. And so Kelly has done this to people that kind of push back at, like, oh, the universe doesn't have your back. That's some, granola-y thing. And they'll use kind of pejorative language to minimize her thoughts or feelings. She says, okay, well, then try this for me. Be very clear. If you're feeling lonely, this would be an example. Say to the universe, God, whatever, say to the universe or God, Jesus, please, in the next 24 hours, give me a clear reminder that I am not alone. Say it out loud. Mark the time. And sure enough, I will tell you, every time I have done that, there has been something that came. And I'm not talking like, oh, I could kind of look for it because maybe I'm biased in defining it. No, I'm talking about a knock you on the head. There is no way this can be interpreted differently. Like a friend that I haven't talked to in 10 years, right? Or a chance encounter like you had that showed up after I deliberately said to God, because I talk to God, but let's say universe, I said, I need a reminder. I need some moment to happen in the next 24 hours to remind me that I'm not alone. And it has always come through. So maybe Elizabeth opened the door a little bit with some talk about scientific studies that support this. Now, if you're a little open to even trying it a little bit more, put it out there. Say, universe, give me this reminder, and put a time frame on it. I wouldn't say like do it in the next like 5 minutes, but who knows, it may be, you might be surprised, but just try that. And I know, because I was a little on that skeptical place, and Kelly came through and she was like, just try it. It has always helped me, always. So.
May I say, though, to your point, not even being open to that possibility, but then even being open to the answer. So notice,
yes.
It's not a laundry list. It's not a Santa Claus wish list where you're testing the universe to deliver what you yourself think that you want. It is not unlike what we talked about in terms of the prior episode and blessings inventory and unanswered prayers, which the unanswered prayers are actually blessings. It's more getting in touch with the openness of a feeling that you might need, or some sort of answer that you might need, as opposed to a particular thing.
Yep.
The reason why I bring that up is because sometimes what gets us in the way, we get in our own way, I should say. We ourselves get in our own way from that alignment with our higher self and the universe and God. When we ourselves become attached to what we think we need. Because when we are attached to that one thing, as opposed to clinging to your soulmate, the universe, source, force. That's how we get in our own way. So again, when we talk about spirituality versus religion per se, Buddhism, at least my understanding, Buddhism is more of a practice
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to a strict dogmatic religion of doctrine. And one of the things, and there are many I know Christian theologians who say that they are better Christians because they practice Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the tenets, not dogma, but tenets of Buddhism is lack of attachment, because it is the attachment to a thing, an idea, a person that keeps us in the way of actually true alignment with God and universe. So it's not that it's, even in the Bible, in the scripture, when Jesus is tested, it's not that you're testing like, okay, well, I'm going to think of a rubber ducky, and rubber ducky should show up in my life somehow, some way, some shape or form in 24 hours. Mind you, it did work. I did that. So I would listen to this audio thing, and the idea was a rubber ducky. And sure enough, within 24 hours, it actually turned out as the universe is abundant. I was driving on Kapilani Boulevard, which is the main road, and I look up by McCully Shopping Center, which is this little, a little shopping mall thing. Yeah. And there was a big sign that said, like, 2 weeks from now was the March of Dimes rubber ducky race, where thousands of rubber duckies are going to be let out in the Alawai Canal. And that happened within the 24 hours. So having said that, though it worked for me, really, where there is even more openness to the alignment of the wonders and awe and blessings is not truly being attached to something, and therefore asking more in general. For example, rather than, and I even learned this with my own children, rather than wanting a particular college with a particular name, and hopefully, that is where my son is going to go, and we're going to visualize and vision board and manifest. And I'm not making fun of that practice at all, because I get that works for many people, but I'm just saying, taking a step back and even allowing the universe to provide you even more than you can ever dream of is recognizing, okay, never mind the name of that particular university for my son. What is it that I want for my son? I want for my son to feel engaged and whole and nurtured and inspired, and amongst a community that loves him and he loves it back, and being kind of more open in general. The universe can't help but conspire to provide that for you. That's in The Alchemist, with written by Paulo Coelho. When you ask of something, the universe conspires to provide that for you. Well, guess what? Because the universe is far greater than you, because God is far greater than me. Why limit God by what I'm asking for in specifics? Yeah. Instead, be open to God, to the universe, to source, to force, and the amazing things that the universe and God can supply, by, rather than limiting specific things and asking to test it, be instead open to receive the abundance.
Mm-hmm. I have a story for that, if you don't mind.
Sure, absolutely.
With no surprise here, but I will say, so I think I might have told this story before, but I was leaving California and heading back to Chicago, and I'm kind of like you. When I get on a plane, I don't really want to talk to anybody. I get into my own space, but I was having a difficult time leaving my family. And I think for me, the feeling of loneliness often comes when I recognize that the people that I love the most and the energies that I love the most are not close to me, but they still exist somewhere on the world. I'm just not close to it. And that's really hard. It's hard to like say goodbye to somebody that I love. And I don't mean goodbye as in death, but that certainly is a part of it as well. So as I was leaving, I was struggling and thinking, I'm going back to this place where we don't have any friends, and I have people in my life that exist that I love and they love me, and we like spending time with each other, and yet I'm choosing to go away from that, and so I'm kind of in this place. And I said, God, please, between now and a day from now, give me some reminder that I'm not alone, and that I have purpose, or there's a reason why I'm here, right? That I to just help me understand. And I think I talked about this. I ended up having a great conversation with the woman sitting on the aisle. I was in the window and there was nobody between us. And she was wrestling with her nephew being gay and how her sibling was responding, and everything. I had expected that reminder from God would be something that would happen to me rather than something that would happen from me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we got off the plane, and this woman was so beyond grateful. And I was grateful too, even though I don't usually like to talk to people, but she was so beyond grateful about the way in which it was kismet that we sat
Mm-hmm.
next to each other, given what she needed. And I walked off the plane like, I just left my family 3 hours ago. And here is this wonderful reminder, not only that I'm not alone, but also that my request was tethered to a very specific outcome. And actually, the outcome was far better, or the result was far better, because my own perspective was limiting the impact that it could have had. You
Yeah.
understand what it would have looked like.
Totally.
So that is, as you're talking, like that story, which I've talked about before, is a perfect way to capture that I was holding on to like what I thought the answer should be from God, when in fact it was so much better. It
So
was
much
truly so
better.
much better.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we are all connected. I mean, that is part of faith and spirituality. Again, not religion. In there are some religions that are so exclusive that they are based on judgment and exclusion. So I'm making myself 100,000% clear. I'm not talking religion, and I'm not talking dogma, and I'm not talking doctrine, and I'm not talking denomination. I am talking faith and spirituality and universality. There is something very universal amongst us and between us, and something greater than each of us as individuals. And so, yes, moments, feelings of loneliness will be there. It is a part of life. It is a part of the human experience. Ironically, though, that sometimes it is in those moments of feeling lonely, if we can connect and align with our soul mate within the universe, our soul mate of God, that's actually when we can realize most that we are not alone.
So, listeners, before we sign off, it's the teachers in us that want to just make sure that we are as clear as we can be, not only for you but also for ourselves, that as Elizabeth is talking about soulmate, that we really move away from that idea of a soulmate tied to a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that we were talking about when we ask God or we ask the universe for something, that we distance ourselves from feeling like we want a specific outcome. Okay. So the idea of a soulmate is this idea that your soul is tethered to something bigger, something greater, something that reminds you that who you are, just as you are, the minute you were born, you were whole and you were beautiful and you are perfect in your conception. And so I I don't want us to leave the podcast without really making sure, or this episode, without making sure that we make that very clear. And it is in that relationship with your soulmate, not a person, in that relationship with God, in that relationship with the universe, that you find true, I don't want to say proof, but you find true clarity that you are not just simply enough,
You are more than enough,
just as you are,
period.
period.
Mwah. Bless you all.